Well, let's get to it. With Caleb Calhoun, I'm Dave Hooker as the Vols go to Fayetteville and lose to the Razorbacks in pretty astonishingly bad fashion, as Tennessee proved that even with two starting offensive tackles back in the game, that their pass rush woes and offensive line woes are for real. Coming up, we'll have the turning point of the game. We'll also have takeaways. There's plenty of that. We'll have our poll question, today's tough question, as well as a lot to get to. A big day in the SEC, certainly. And let's start, obviously, with an incredibly disappointing loss by Tennessee. This is the last look, brought to you by Doctors Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn. Enjoy life better when you see better. Caleb, let's get started. What did you see out of this game that shocked or surprised you? Because I've got a pretty hefty list I can deliver.
I'm going to be honest, the most shocking part of this, and we're going to get to this, and this was not going to be my lead until the very last drive, but guys, Nico Eberle choked. And I mean, you hate to say that, but that was a choke job on that last drive. He fumbles. I mean, he bobbles a snap, that perfect snap by Cooper. Nothing wrong. I mean, that just looked like a nervous play. And then he pulls a Joe Milton on the final play of the game, which is, rather than trying to throw it into the end zone to let his receivers make a play, he scrambles. He doesn't know what he's doing. I mean, those type of things stand out. We never saw Nico Eberle in this type of situation. I really wasn't blaming him for a lot of things going on leading up to that moment. The minuscule stats, he was under a lot of pressure from Arkansas's defense all night, which we'll get to. But on that final drive, yeah, those last two plays, well, I guess two of the last three, or maybe the last two, yeah, he choked. There's no way around it. You can't make those mistakes.
No, and I'll take it a step further. Okay, so yes, he choked, but even in the one play that he made downfield to that, I think it was Dante Thornton, right?
Yep.
That was not a well-thrown ball. That was up for grabs. Yes, it was a completion. Yes, it was a first down and got Tennessee within striking distance, but that wasn't even a good throw, as I thought if he would have led Thornton more towards Nico's left, that he could have had a bigger play out of that. But I can't argue with you. I think Nico Eberle did choke, and I don't know what this means for the future. I could discount that and say, oh, he's a young guy, everything's going to be okay. But I came away, and you mentioned the Joe Milton moment, and I'm certainly not saying that's going to be the case, as Joe Milton never lived up to his physical billing. However, that's the first thing that went through my mind, and now you have a real concern about a guy that is going to be in clutch situations probably about 3 or 4 more times this season with this offensive line that is just woefully bad, and there's no excuse for it. Now, when I say the offensive line's bad, I'm not talking about the guys on the interior. I'm talking about the tackles. Tennessee has a tackle issue, even if they're healthy, with Lance Hurd in the game and John Campbell Jr. in the game. They didn't look much better than against Oklahoma. They couldn't stop anybody, and that dictated the flow and play of the game. I don't want to just jump on board and rip Josh Heupel because Tennessee lost, but I'm curious as to why he has been resistant to run that 12 personnel earlier in the game against Arkansas. Why he didn't rely on that, Caleb, because it was semi-effective in the second half. No, it wasn't incredibly effective. Nothing was incredibly effective, but I felt like Josh Heupel, Caleb, and we'll be the first to say it. We thought that this would be a breakout game for Nico Eberle because Arkansas couldn't play pass defense, supposedly 14th into the game. But, Caleb, I feel like Josh Heupel was trying to prove us right and force too many things on Nico early when they could have gone 12 personnel, 2 tight ends, and probably have won this game if they'd have done that from the get.
Well, I was going to criticize a few things about Josh Heupel that I'm very critical of. I agree with you, by the way. They went 12 personnel once on any deep balls I remember. And in case you forgot, it was that one Nico Iamaleava just missed Squirrel White down the sideline, but they had the play was there. And you know the play I'm talking about, Dave, right?
Yep.
I mean,
Yep.
White was wide open. And I was confused on why they didn't do that more after that, because
well, it's not even that. It's, to me, it's a walk before you run, a crawl before you walk. I mean, when you can't even protect Nico and set pass protection, you've got to do something. You've got to have tight ends that help him out. And I feel like I thought this might be an Achilles heel for Josh Heupel years ago. I feel like he's so enamored with scoring, so enamored with being the offensive guru, that at times it can affect his decision-making. And I would argue it did so with the game plan that he put together from the get. They wanted to throw the ball downfield, but at the end of the day, Arkansas was able to defend Tennessee's running game with, for the most part, 4 or 5, and drop guys into quarters, Caleb. So it was a mismatch on the edges with Tennessee's offensive tackles. I really think it was as simple as that.
Yeah. I thought so too. And, you know, I was actually critical of the interior in the first half because Tennessee could not run the ball. That changed in the second half. They were actually running it fine. What was very clear was Cooper Mays, Javonte Spraggins, and Andre Carrick really wore down Arkansas's defensive front on the interior in the second half. And that's when you started to see those big plays break for Dylan Sampson. But yeah, John Campbell and Lance Hurd, I mean, there were mistakes after mistakes after mistakes. And I can't just criticize that. Dave, you know, I can't even believe I'm saying this after what I said about him at the beginning of the year, but that was not the time to put Deshaun Bishop in the game. When Tennessee was up 14-3, Arkansas scores to cut it to 14-10. And in case you guys forgot, they put Deshaun Bishop in the game cold, and he misses a key block that resulted in a sack on Nico Iamaleava. Nico was sacked 4 times in the game. Arkansas had a total of 10 sacks all year, and they had 4 this game alone. And that missed block by Deshaun Bishop was a huge part of it. By the way, should have had 5. Do you remember the play, the 4th down that they didn't convert at the end of the first half, Dave, where John Campbell drew the holding penalty?
Yes. That
holding penalty, I mean, that's why they didn't convert the 4th down, because John Campbell got abused on that play. I don't know if that was Landon Jackson who did it to him, but he got wrecked. And there were just some, and I got to throw out, 2 shocks, because I've been high on Heupel for a long time, or Nico for a long time, and like you have been high on Heupel. There were some base level mistakes. I mean, how
about calling timeouts? Or not calling timeouts? Clock management stuff that we make fun of other coaches for doing that should.
And I will be making fun of Josh Heupel for it on Tuesday.
Well, I don't blame you. I mean, that's really basic stuff. And I'm not saying this in retrospect. I tweeted out if you want to check that. By the way, do me a favor, hit the like button. We're going to get to many, many of your comments as we'll go ahead and throw out today's tough question. It's on our poll question. I guess it's tonight's tough question. Last week brought to you by Campbell Cunningham, Taylor and Hahn. Life is better. Enjoy life better when you see better.
Today's tough question. Take a side. Take a stand. The Dave Hooker Show, a presentation of offthehooksports.com.
Well, there's 5 million different ways I can go with this, but here's what I'm going to do. The poll question is on the YouTube page right now. Caleb, what is it?
I'm trying to pull it up. I apologize. My computer's
that's fine. I'll throw it out there. Here we go. All right, it's this. It's pretty simple. Who do you blame the most? Nico, Heupel, offensive tackles. Caleb, I feel strongly about one. You can we work together enough. You can probably see where I'm leaning, but let me get your thoughts.
I'm sympathetic to you wanting to blame the offensive tackles. I am, and to many people maybe wanting to blame the offensive tackles, but I put this way more on Heupel. I think Josh Heupel should have done more about the issue with the offensive tackles. His clock management was terrible. Heck, even at the end of the game, I don't know what Kirk was saying Guys, I'm all for letting a team score a lot of times. I get that, but Tennessee had 2 timeouts left. There was a minute 17. You don't let somebody score in that situation, because if they kick a field goal, then you just need a field goal to win the game. You don't let somebody score.
I completely agree. And go ahead, finish. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's one thing if you have no timeouts or 1 timeout and they can run the clock all the way down and kick a field goal. I get it then. You have 2 timeouts. You're going to get the ball back with about 35 seconds left. Plenty of time to get into field goal range for a game-winning field goal. If they're going to run the clock down for a field goal, that's not the situation you let them score in at all. And so that was a huge mistake.
Kyle says it's on Nico basketball soon. No, we're not going that far yet, says Bob. This is a long season, and we saw other upsets in the SEC, and Tennessee can still, I know this sounds insane at this point, can still compete for a college football playoff spot. Now, this is the old system with 4 teams making the playoffs. You're not going to make it, and you're clearly going to have to beat either Alabama or Georgia, and maybe both, because this is an ugly win. I don't think that Arkansas is going to suddenly start to light up the scoreboard and light up the win column, Caleb. So I'm going to argue you look back at this 6 weeks from now, and this is at best, or let's say the end of the season, this is at best a 7-5 team with Sam Pittman probably getting fired. I mean, that's a really bad loss. Not as bad as Alabama Vanderbilt, but it's a really bad loss.
It's absolutely a bad loss. It's a terrible loss. And also the reason it's even worse is because Alabama is not going to look like a good win now, even if Tennessee does pull off that win.
Well, I mean, let's hold on a second. I mean, right now where this offensive line is, I don't see them beating Alabama. I don't see them beating Georgia. And I'm going to share something I think I've mentioned before. But I was talking with somebody in Tennessee's football program, and this was before the 2023 season. So I was just talking to him, and I said, well, you've got this situation, and Caleb brought it up last week about not developing offensive linemen. Okay, so I spoke to this person, and I said, well, everything seems to be fine this year. And then, of course, Cooper got hurt, and we know the beginning of the year. But still, I said, what about 2024? I don't see the guys that are going to step in there. And this person says, yep, that's the problem. That was before the 2023 season, Caleb. And I know I've said that before. I think I've told you that, but and I've said it publicly. But I think it carries more weight now, and this guy was right, because they tried to bail themselves out of either poor offensive line recruiting or poor offensive line development with a guy named Lance Hurd that has the explosion of this bookshelf behind me.
Yeah, it's something that we had been raising red flags over for years. Now, I want to be fair to them in terms of offensive line development. I mean, outside of that first downfield penalty that he drew, which you could question that, they didn't show the replay, so I don't know if it's his fault. But Andre Carrick has played significantly better, is it fair to say, this year than he did last year?
Hey, and when I say offensive line, I want to be real clear. I'm not talking about the guards or center Cooper Mace, okay? And I think that their interior is good. I don't understand why they didn't go 12 personnel and protect those tackles and just run it in between the tackles from the get. I'll say it. Josh Heupel's ego got in his way when he was putting this game plan together.
Yeah, he. I think you're right. He wanted to do what we thought was going to happen with Nico. He wanted to make up for what he couldn't do for Nico at Oklahoma, and it really showed. And it almost was a we joke about a Steve Spurrier level lack of patience, Dave. That's what you saw here. But the second half comes, he realizes he's in a dogfight, and I think he makes the other mistake. The drive before the drive that they punted that set up Arkansas's game-winning drive, it was late in the fourth quarter, Dave. What were they doing? It was 3rd and 8, and he does a draw with Dylan Sampson to bring up a 4th and 3. I mean, again, I'm just going to say it, and I'm going to say it out front. The only reason I will say put the game somewhat in Nico's hands, I know he's a redshirt freshman. He's your $2 million man. How many times have we talked about this? You paid him a lot of money for these type of situations. It's 3rd and 8. You're near midfield. A first down gives you a great chance to lock up this win. Why don't you put the ball in his hands?
Herein lies the problem. I don't care how much you pay for him. He's still 19 years old. And I got in a bit of a disagreement with someone on Twitter about this. And they said, what about that guy down at Alabama? How old's he? And I thought he was referring to Jalen Milroe. No, he was referring to Ron Williams. He's 17 and won't be 18 till the end of the year. That's a once-in-a-generation type of player, and Nico's playing a much more difficult position. So if I had to rank the three in the blame game, I would say the offensive tackles first, Heupel, and then Nico. And maybe you've talked me into putting Heupel number one because the game plan just did not fit what Tennessee has in its personnel right now.
No, not at all. And I think that, look, I think that is my biggest issue with Josh Heupel on this is the game plan and the lack of certain adjustments and also just the clock management. I mean, they have another football IQ moment that didn't bear out because Sam Pittman took a knee, but I mean, it was kind of dumb and dumber if you think about it. But into the first, okay, remember when they wanted to attempt that fourth down at the end of the first half?
Yes.
No issue there. Fine. Why did you call the timeout with 8 seconds left? Why didn't you call it with 3 seconds left? Because you saw they had to run players back on the field because Arkansas got a chance to run more and more play. Now they chose to take a knee. I don't know why. I think you take a shot, but that's just me. But I mean, there were some base level clock management, in-game management mistakes from Josh Heupel that I'd never seen. And by the way, I want to point this out. I know he gave up a touchdown drive at the end, but I'm still riding hard for Tim Banks, and I think you are too, Dave. I mean, but how gassed was the defensive front by the end of that game?
Oh, listen, if you don't score, I mean, if you don't score 20 points, I mean, you would expect to win that game, wouldn't you?
Yeah, you would expect to win the game. Exactly. I mean, if you told me that they were going to hold Arkansas to 19 points, I would say, okay, I think they got this. And I mean, this loss lies on the offense. Period. End of story.
Okay, so here we go. How much confidence do you have in Nico? 13% say 0. Very little, 39%. Still hanging in there, 47%. I mean, I'm just going to be frank. The running out of bounds showed a total lack of awareness to me, and I think that is very disconcerting. I'm not saying that I've thrown in the towel on Nico. Far from that. Okay. But that to me was a huge, major red flag that either too much was put on him or he's not able to handle what he's asked to do. One of the two.
Yeah. And do you think it could be the former? Do you think because they paid him so much money and they've been trying to drive a Nico hype train that he is just, as a 19-year-old, is feeling more? I mean, look, let's just be honest. He's feeling more pressure than even Peyton Manning was at this age. I don't even think there's a debate about that. And do you think that it's a type of pressure that, I don't want to be one of those anti-NIL old school guys, but that just, it's the first time we're seeing it on a 19-year-old and we're seeing how they actually handle stuff like that now. And they're not meant to handle that.
You raise a very valid point, and you hope that Nico's not the poster boy for hype gone wild. And it has been. You know, he has, he's got Beats by Dre as an endorser, for goodness sake. $2 million is woefully low. You know, people were talking about the $2 million a year quarterback. Well, that was before the Beats by Dre and all that stuff. So he's probably over that. So is there a chance that Nico Iamaleava, despite what you and I thought early, and we both told our fans that we thought he was going to be fantastic, and he might still be. By the way, he's 20, pointed out. He's no longer a teenager, but still, point is made. But when I look at the end of that game, I've got real concern that they put too much on him, and that to me is that's on Josh Heupel. But at the same token, Caleb, you've got to know 6 seconds are on the clock at the end of the game.
Yes, you have to know 6 seconds are on the clock. Again, guys, we lit up Joe Milton for this mistake.
Exact mistake.
The exact same mistake. I mean, there was no difference between the two. And we all questioned if he could handle anything after that, quite honestly. And look, we have to be fair. We have to hold Nico to the same standard. I wasn't saying this about Nico, by the way, Dave. the entire throughout the entire game. I wasn't saying this, even though the numbers were pedestrian. That last drive changed me. I mean, again, that was a massive. It was a panic job, wasn't it? I mean, not just a choke job. I mean, it was your classic choke job where he got scared of the moment. I mean,
they had one play that they needed to hit, and I don't know if you saw it, but you know, they run that little long in the flat thing. Sometimes it's a screen. They did it with Milton to the point that it made you physically ill, but he pump faked to the side, and then you had somebody running a go, and that was the shot. I think Josh Heupel believed it was on when Tennessee got the ball. It was first down when they got the ball back on the final drive. I think he thought that was his shot, which is part of the reason he let Arkansas score, which is a whole nother debate, which you brought up. I didn't understand that either. I don't understand why you give up a touchdown. And let's not forget, before that, they let the clock run down to the 2-minute warning. They could have called a timeout and had about 2:45 left. So if they call a timeout there, then they're in better position. But yeah, the game plan and the management of the last 5 minutes were, and Caleb will have his report card tomorrow, but they were a big F as far as coaching goes.
They were a huge F. I mean, I'm willing to call this Josh Heupel's worst coach game at Tennessee. I mean, it was honestly
close. I mean,
it's not close.
Yeah. No, yeah. And Colton, I hear you. I can't say that Nico is the cool cat who's going to be awesome immediately and then say, well, he's only 19. Well,
you're right.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. I agree. I mean, I thought he was too cool of a cat at times. I thought he was too patient. You've got to get the ball out when your back foot hits, especially in a 2-minute type of drill.
And I got a question for you, Dave. You know, he was holding the ball all night, and you saw that too, as well as I did. Was that on the fact that there just weren't looks downfield that you're used to seeing in this offense, or was that on Nico just being a little too nervous to make a play? Because all game I was saying it was on the looks downfield, but then I go to the you know, you see it on your TV screen. You can't see the whole field on your TV screen, so you don't really know. I guess that's the advantage of somebody like you getting to cover games from the press box your whole career. You actually got to see the whole field a lot of times.
Yeah, and I'll take a look at the all 22, which is the end zone before we next convene Mondays at 10 a.m. But I thought it was pretty simple what they played. I thought they just dropped and played quarters for the most part and would occasionally throw in a blitz. I didn't think what they did was, yes, there was some gamesmanship, and Tennessee didn't respond to that well by jumping off sides. 4 times, Caleb? Or I'm sorry, false start 4 times?
I think it was 4 times, yeah.
Yeah, I didn't necessarily think that Arkansas did anything special schematically.
No, I didn't think they did either. I thought the same thing. I think that, and part of the reason was they didn't have to, Dave, because again, they were getting pressure with just 5 all night. I mean, they were winning the line of scrimmage with just 5. Now in the first half, they were winning. They were stopping the run game, but you know, here's the problem, and we keep bringing this up. Once the run game got going in the second half, you could tell that Josh Heupel was ready to take his shots, and I think they were trying to. They weren't there. They were never there, and part of that was Nico kept getting under pressure, and the offensive line kept making mistakes. I mean, again, and you're right, it was the tackles. I want to have who was worse, Lance Hurd or John Campbell? I think Lance Hurd made more mental mistakes, but John Campbell got beat way more in this one.
No, I agree. I just, to me, Lance Hurd just doesn't have much explosiveness. And if that, you know, he couldn't start at LSU, as somebody else told me at the time, said, I don't understand. We're taking players, and this was back when the conversation about Tennessee's offensive line, and we're taking players who can't play elsewhere. That was what he said. Someone very well-placed in Tennessee's football program. So to me, there are a lot of issues going on. But number one is the offensive line. We'll ask the question, is it fixable? As we remind you, Last Look brought to you by Doctors Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn. Enjoy life better when you see better. Give me 15 seconds.
to visit cctis.com. The information you need is easy to access, and setting an appointment is as simple as clicking the tab. Doctors Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn and Eye Care Optical at cctis.com, simply the best.
Okay, let me start with you. Let's pretend for a second that you're allowed to go back and change your prediction, which you are. So, I mean, that's part of sports. Given what you've seen, what would you say is Tennessee's final record now?
I'm going down with the ship, and I'm going to say 10-2 still. And I'm going to say I'm actually going to tell you guys, I still think they're going to beat Alabama. I still think they're going to lose to Georgia, and they're going to win every other game. I think that, look, Tennessee's a victim of it, but Josh Pate called it on Wednesday, and then I told you guys that this was going to happen on Friday when I made my picks. But we all said it, Dave, didn't we? That this was going to be chaos weekend in college football. This is the weekend where chaos hits because so many good teams visit unranked teams this weekend. And guys, just so you know, Tennessee's not alone. Miami right now is losing to Cal 21-10. That was my super dog. We know about Alabama and Vanderbilt. I mean, that's Dave, you got me on the spread. I picked Alabama to cover, but I told you the game would hit the over, and it did hit the over. So you got me on that. But that's not even it. Missouri getting blown out by Texas A&M 41-10. I actually think that was more just Missouri getting exposed as a fraudulent, undefeated team than some sort of upset. But then Michigan lost to
whoa. So which is this then? I mean, is this a team that got exposed, or is this just an upset?
It's an upset. It was 19-14. It wasn't 41-10. It was 19-14 on the road in an SEC night game. Well, against the team, by the way. Look, this was gonna be the second part of this that I was gonna say, but where we could fall back and like not panic too much if you're a Tennessee fan, guys. Arkansas is a 3-2 team that should have been 5-0 coming into this game. And I mean, they easily should have been 5-0. And they won this game 19-14 at an SEC night game on a day where Alabama lost to Vanderbilt. Miami is losing by 2 scores to Cal as we speak. Again, by the time you're watching this, that could change. I'm just telling you guys what's happening in the first half with 2 minutes to go. Washington beat Michigan. Minnesota beat USC. Clemson only beat Florida State by 2 scores. I mean, SMU beat Louisville. I mean, there were no top 20. And Syracuse beat UNLV, by the way. Just how many unranked teams beat ranked teams this week? This was stuff that we talked about was going to happen, and it happened. Did Tennessee get exposed? Let me put it this way. Did Tennessee get exposed? Yes, but it's not the same way Missouri got exposed. Missouri got exposed as a fraudulent, undefeated team. Tennessee got exposed as a team with severe weaknesses. That doesn't mean that this season's a total loss. I mean, the Oklahoma win still happened, guys.
Yeah, but I wonder how much they were exposed then for lack of depth at offensive tackle. I mean, obviously, you don't want to be down your 2 starting offensive tackles, but I'm just going to go ahead and tell you that there are rosters in the SEC that could overcome that. So we said from the get that Tennessee had to be really healthy at offensive tackle, and they're supposedly healthy when they come back. But let's not forget this: that chemistry of playing with each other on the offensive line. It is not going to be nearly what it would have been if heading into the first month of the season, Lance Hurd and John Campbell Jr. were healthy the whole time. I've seen too many offensive lines that were not as good as the sum of their parts, their individual parts, because they didn't play together. I've seen other offensive lines, Caleb, that did play together and were way better than what they proved to be as individual offensive linemen in the NFL, for instance.
Yeah, no, that's a great point, and that was an underrated part of the 2022 team is the offensive line had played together for so long. And that's why, again, I'm going to be fair. That's why I think Andre Carrick is so much better this year. And how much did I rip him in the summer? And
no, you did. And again, it goes back to this simple fact. Why are we saying that now that Tennessee could run the football and Josh Heupel didn't think that early in the game and didn't just absolutely run it at him? I can't answer that question other than his ego and hubris got in the way.
Yeah, well, okay. In the first half, I didn't blame anything on Josh Heupel or Nico except for that last drive in the first half, Dave, because I'm going to be honest. you and I have talked about this. This offense doesn't go unless the run game is happening, and the run game wasn't there in the first half. But
I didn't think they gave it enough of an opportunity.
I thought they did. I thought they just made a lot of mistakes. I guess that's
for debate. I just don't understand why you don't come in with a game plan that is totally different than what Tennessee used to do with the 3-wide look and tempo and all that good stuff. You can go tempo and keep the wrong guys on the field, but you can go 12 personnel and be much better in pass protection and much better running the football. Caleb, they should have started in 12 personnel, 2 tight ends for those that don't know, and never have come out of that. Not once.
Yeah. Because you bring that up because the one time they did it, the play was there with Squirrel White. I'll also say that there's a lot of other factors we have to get into this, but Dave, let's point this out. One of the big negatives is one of my takeaways in the game, and I had to change it when Tennessee lost because this doesn't matter anymore. But Arkansas did Arkansas. And what I mean by that is in the first half, Arkansas moved it up and down the field, torched Tennessee, and they had just a 3-0 lead because they missed 2 4th downs. They missed a field goal. And I'm like, this is classic Sam Pittman, Arkansas football right now, where they should be ahead by way more, and then they're going to lose because of this. It's not like they did in Arkansas and Tennessee. Because many people would have said, oh, Tennessee played bend but don't break defense, please. They weren't trying to bend like that. Arkansas just was setting the tempo. Tennessee just didn't capitalize when they needed to, and they got lucky that Arkansas wasn't finishing drives. In the second half, though, that was the tempo Tennessee wanted to play, right? Arkansas dictated the tempo in the first half, but wouldn't you agree Tennessee did dictate the tempo in the second half? And they still couldn't finish.
Yes. But I think the wearing effect on your defense had already set in to some extent. Whereas, the big run by the big tailback in the fourth quarter, I guess, to me, those don't happen if your defense isn't gassed at the end of the game. And I don't understand how you get a defense gassed that has suddenly 12 defensive linemen. I can't tell you that I specifically saw every substitution, Caleb, but it certainly didn't feel like Tennessee's defensive line was fresh at the end of the game as they were against Oklahoma.
No, they weren't. And part of that was, it's one of the first times, and I can't believe I'm saying this, Dave, because we talk about how in this day and age, in this day in football, these type of things don't matter. But, field position and time of possession, they were factors at the end of this game. I mean, it's the first. Arkansas won this game the way you won an SEC football game in the 90s, didn't they?
Yes. To be frank with you, the opening drive of the second half, I'd already written the narrative because I thought Tennessee was going to end up winning by about 2 touchdowns, 17 points, because they were going to hunker down and run the football. I thought they were going to win, much like Oklahoma, a comfortable 10. Okay. But that didn't happen. The narrative was going to be, and what I was going to write and had written and will never see the light of day, is exactly what ESPN brought up. And that was, here is a team with a young quarterback, a really good defense, and they win conservatively, and they escape a game versus Arkansas like 1998. That was the narrative that seemed to play out, or as it was going to play out early in the first half. Little did we know that Nico just would not respond on that final drive. But again, that's putting an awful lot on him. And I go back to what you said. You could have made it much more doable if Tennessee just had to kick a field goal.
Well, all I know is, you definitely could have made it much more doable. Because that Dante Thornton catch still could have happened. Arkansas was playing soft zone coverage. They still made that play. They would have played that exact same defensive scheme if there were 37 seconds left. And so I don't understand. Again, and the crazy part, Dave, was that Kirk Herbstreit, who I think is really good at his job, was saying the same thing. Oh, that was genius by Josh Heupel to let him score. How? You're playing to go down. You're playing to trail. I'd rather be down 16-14 with the ball on my own 25 and 37 seconds left than down 19-14 with the ball on my own 25 and a minute 17 left. It's a lot easier to get into field goal range than it is to try to score a touchdown at the end of a game. A lot easier.
Agreed. And let's not forget this. I mean, who was it that did that in the Super Bowl? I don't think it worked out for them either.
Mike Holmgren.
That's right. It
Packers.
Also sets a tone, doesn't it? That, hey, we're kind of up the creek here. I mean, football is a physical, in-your-face sport. I mean, I don't like the tone that sets. There are some situations where it's mandatory, Caleb, but as a whole, I don't like that concept.
I'm not against it in principle. It would depend. Okay, so let me ask you this, Dave. If Tennessee had 0 timeouts left, you would have agreed to let them score then, right?
Yes. I'm not. No. I'm not 100% that way. That would be, at that point, that wouldn't have even entered my mindset.
Yeah, no, I mean, I understand. Yeah, I get what you're saying. In the situation they're in. And the other part of this is we can play this game. Arkansas had a backup kicker in.
I know.
So you go ahead and play defense and see if you can. And people are going to bring this up because the guys, can we get to the turning point of the game? Because there's a clear turning point of the game. And I'll just tell you what it is.
Yes. New poll question that is up. Go ahead and comment on our YouTube page. Should Vols have let Arkansas score? Yes, only way to win. No, can't. No, can't let someone score a TD. All right, Caleb, what's the turning point?
It was the running into the kicker penalty, and everybody's talking about it. And it's that simple. Tennessee was up 14-10. They had just forced a punt. They were about to get the ball back, and they were really dictating the flow of the game in the second half at that point. And they draw that penalty. And honestly, you can blame Jordan Ross. That's another Josh Heupel mistake. Why are you trying to block the punt in that situation? You have set the tone of the second half. And in this day and age, I'm not for punt blocks in general because of how the likelihood to penalty ratio of them. And in this day and age, you're about to get the ball. You have been gashing Arkansas on the ground. Yeah, you had to punt the previous stride, but overall, you're playing well at this point offensively. You just gave them all the momentum when you did that.
Yeah, listen, first of all, that's a lot to unpack. Okay, so Jordan Ross is, I don't know, they didn't send 10. I mean, they didn't just go after it. He's also a freshman. He could have made just a monstrous mistake. I mean, he is going to go after each and every punt, and he has blocked one and returned it for a touchdown this year. So, Caleb, I don't have a problem with him giving it his all, but he has to know that you cannot run into the punter. That needs to be spoken by Mike Eckersley, the special teams coach. Eckler, excuse me, while he's jumping up and down on the sidelines. I mean, that has to be conveyed to that punt block team, or in this case, punt run into team.
The punt run into team. I like that. That absolutely has to. I mean, that case has to be. You have to emphasize that in that scenario. And Dave, I think in some cases, if you're not interested in blocking the punt, and they shouldn't have been at that point, I don't think you send anybody. Why not just have everybody drop back and block on punt return? I mean, I don't understand the whole unless you're going all out for a block, I'm not one who really believes in sending anybody to try to block a punt. I think that's an old school, outdated, archaic way of thinking in football. And by the way, Josh Heupel knows this because last year against Texas A&M, the game-changing play was a punt return touchdown by D. Williams, and he dropped everybody back, caught Texas A&M off guard. They weren't ready for coverage, and that set up the touchdown. I don't know why you wouldn't do the same thing in this scenario. It just doesn't make sense.
Record number of people in the chat and live now, so I would encourage you to do this. Please hit subscribe, turn your notifications on, as you'll get objective coverage of the Vols each and every weekday at 10 a.m. and throughout your YouTube channel or wherever you podcast. Please subscribe and hit the like button wherever you are, and we appreciate you being a part of us right now. But be sure and set those notifications on. Caleb, how many takeaways do we have, sir?
Right now we got 5. The post is going up on Off the Hook very, very soon.
Okay. Well, let's go ahead and get to them now. Give me your best 4. 4 downs right now, brought to you by Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn, ccteyes.com, ccteyes.com.
4 downs. 4 questions. 4 answers. The Dave Hooker Show.
4
Downs. A presentation of offthehooksports.com.
All right, takeaways. Caleb's got those. They'll be up here shortly. Not an easy job tonight with a game going down to the final play. Trust me, I feel for you. All right, here we go.
Cooper Mays here. Hit like and subscribe.
Yes, do that.
Coop here. First down.
Your first takeaway, Caleb.
Mistakes by Tennessee football and pass pro. I mean, that's the most clear thing. John Campbell Jr. had a holding penalty after getting beat at the end of the first half. Andre Carrick had a first down waved off for downfield blocking. Nico Iamaleava, whatever you want to say about him, had to get rid of quick deep shots. Deshaun Bishop missed a block. I don't know why he was even in the game at that point. And Arkansas, with only 10 sacks in 5 games, gets 4 on the night in this one. There's just no excuse.
Cooper Mays here. Second down.
I mean, that's terrible. Second down is what? What's your next takeaway?
Nico Iamaleava and Josh Heupel choke jobs. I mean, it's as simple as that. They choked in this game, and Nico was making that final drive, way too many mistakes. I think before that, when he missed Squirrel White on a wide open touchdown pass that was bare, that's the type of pass you're supposed to make in this offense. And I mean, I'm having to reroute everything I've thought about him because the moment was too big for him. Josh Heupel, you bring up the 12 personnel. I bring up the letting them score. I bring up the running on 3rd and 8 on the next to last drive and the not dropping back in punt coverage. There were just major mistakes from the head coach quarterback combo that's supposed to lead Tennessee to the promised land. Are probably the two of the 3 most responsible for losing this game.
Yep, agreed. What's your next takeaway? And Coop will set you up with third down.
Tennessee center Cooper Mays here. Third down.
All right. What do we got?
Run game, going to give it some credit. They got going after the first half, and I thought one of the takeaways of the game should have been that Tennessee's offensive line finally was able to wear down Arkansas's defense in the second half by sticking with the run game. But Dylan Sampson can't do it all by himself. Dylan Sampson was, in terms of skill players, he was it. And truth be told, Dave, we're not talking about this enough, but Nico's not getting the most help from his receivers. Now, all 3 of his top receivers went to the sideline with injuries in this game, and I understand that. But there's a lot of drop passes that are happening right now for Tennessee.
Well, and I don't know how open they're getting downfield, too. I'd like to see the all 22 for that because –
They were well covered all night.
Yeah, I mean, right now, you've got to get open. I mean, there's no reason with Tennessee's arsenal that you can't get open. The other thing that I thought was odd, and I know that Squirrel White, I think, got concussed on a play similar play I'm talking about. It seemed like they just didn't attack the middle of the field very much, which I thought was, listen, it gives you guys a lot more ammunition that think that Alex Golish was a bigger part of this offense, because I thought last year's quarterback did not throw it over the middle because they were afraid it would get turned over. Now, this year's quarterback is not throwing it over the middle when the game's actually on the line. Yeah, you can do it against Kent State all day long, Caleb, but it's not the same thing as being at Arkansas.
No, it's not. And here's the thing with these horizontal passes. They're there to set up those deep shots. They're as much a part of the offense as the run game. I mean, people don't want to admit that, but they are. And they're there to set up those deep shots. And the truth be told, if you don't execute those, and if they're not working, those deep shots aren't going to be there. With Joe Milton,
it wasn't in the first play of the final drive. That's exactly, I don't know if you noticed it, but I mentioned it earlier. It's exactly what they were trying to do.
They were. You're right. They were.
Pump and go, and nobody got open down the field.
Yeah. And is this on the receivers, or is the issue that because those screen passes and then the run game with Dylan Sampson was not working as well as they had hoped, is the issue that they just weren't willing, the safeties are just staying at home over the top. Also, I mean, we have to do this. Nico's not reading the safety as well as Hendon Hooker did. I mean, did you see that play where
Also not moving the safety as well. And he's also going against two safeties a lot.
That's true, but there was a play, and I actually think it was on the final drive. Maybe it was the second to final drive, where there was a play where Miles Kitzelman was going over the middle, and the safety cheated up, and I believe that was Dante Thornton on the outside, and he tried to force it to Miles Kitzelman, who was now double covered with the safety. The minute the safety cheats up, Dave, this offense is you chuck it downfield to Dante Thornton, right? And
I actually thought on that play, okay, I know exactly the play you're talking about, where I thought Kitzelman on the dig should have flattened his route. I thought that he got too far downfield. This was not a great game for Kitzelman, who was also charged with a false start, and then he had to play down the sideline. That ball might have been tipped at the line, but it looked like he was pretty open.
well, then, and where is Ethan Davis?
It's a good question.
Why is he not in the game?
I wondered this originally when they made sure that Ethan Davis caught a touchdown pass. If that wasn't a here you go, buddy, because we're actually going to play these other guys and we don't want you to transfer after the season.
Well, I mean, he looked better than you're right. Kitzelman could have looked tonight. I mean, I'll just say that. You're right.
I'm not arguing with that. No.
I mean, and also on the one where he thought Kitzelman maybe should have changed his route, Nico also, if he was going to throw it to Kitzelman, should have thrown it to him earlier. And that was another mistake. And so Nico's taking way too long to go through his progressions, guys. Way too long. And I'll have to see. I'm with you. Like, you'll have to tell me what you see, because I get it. Maybe there's a lot of coverage sacks, but I mean, these are all, I mean, we know what Brew McCoy can do. We know what Squirrel White can do. We know what Dante Thornton has been doing. I can't believe these are just coverage sacks.
No. Final takeaway, Caleb. What do you got? And then we're going to discuss most disappointing loss for the Vols since would have to be, I guess, the Columbia collapse. This feels worse for some reason.
All SEC center Cooper Mays here. Fourth down.
All right, Caleb, what's your final takeaway? And then we're going to discuss, is this worse than the Columbia collapse?
Field position and time of possession cost the Vols. Old school Sam Pittman played the type of football game he would have wanted to play. And man, if he didn't win a game doing it. And I've been laughing at him. We laughed at him all week. By the way, nothing changes on how I feel about Sam Pittman after this game. I still think he made a lot of mistakes in this game too. It's just he was able to pull it out. But this was man, he would do Phil Fulmer proud with a win like this, wouldn't he?
Yeah. But see, the thing is, Tennessee could have won the game like that. If they'd have come out early with that sort of game plan and that preparation, they could have easily won the game, just like Sam Pittman won it. And it probably would have been about 25-15 like the Oklahoma game. The thing that Josh Heupel adjusted to against Oklahoma that he didn't against Arkansas was the fact that Tennessee was struggling offensively because of tackle play. But I feel like the injuries against the Sooners forced him to lean on the run and lean on his defense. Tonight, I feel like he thought he had a fully stocked gun, and all he did was misfire.
Yeah, I agree. And misfired a lot. Probably, you're right. Probably should have stuck a little bit longer on the run game in the second half when it was working. And shouldn't have put Dejon Bishop in on that next drive. I'm sorry. I maybe Dylan Sampson was tired, Dave, but I feel like if you got a running back that's torching the defense like that, you keep him in the game for a little while, don't you?
Yeah. I didn't understand that substitution. I didn't have as much of a problem with it as you. But new poll question that is up right now: is this worse than the Columbia collapse? Yes, hurts more. No, still plenty to play for. All right. The sun is going to come up at some point, and Tennessee's going to be back on the practice field. So what odds do you give them? Because there is still plenty to play for. What odds do you give them? You just said that you thought Tennessee would be 10-2. So you're predicting still a win over Georgia or Alabama, and that's potentially right there in the college football playoff as it shakes out. Listen, I don't think an SEC team at 10-2 is going to get left out. Now, it could happen if a lot of people finish 10-2, but I think we saw that it's not going to. by Missouri losing, Ole Miss losing last week. So, Caleb, how certain are you, how confident are you that Tennessee can get this turned around and be in position to make a playoff spot?
I'm still pretty confident. I think that I think Tennessee could. I still have them going. I have them going 10-2. I predicted 11-1 at the beginning of the season, and so now I'm just adjusting to 10-2. I think that let's have some perspective on this, Dave, just a little bit for a minute. It's 5 games with a new starter at quarterback, and Tennessee's played 2 home games against. They've only played 2 games at home in 5 games with a new starter quarterback, and it's been the gauntlet of an SEC schedule. They played an Oklahoma team who they are the only team to beat so far this year. By hook or crook, Oklahoma is 4-1. And then they played an Arkansas team that should have been 5-0 coming into the game. That was good enough to be 5-0 going into the game. And
let me play the other side of it, though. You say a rough and tumble SEC schedule. I would argue that Tennessee probably got a little bit too big of a big head against the Chattanooga, Kent State, NC State. Felt a little too good about themselves. The goal was not accomplished, not even close. And I say that more about the coaching staff than the players.
Yeah, I mean, I could give it to you with the coaches, but NC State, for the record, did just lose to Wake Forest. So, I mean, they don't look like a good win anymore either. But Tennessee did blow them out. I think they can right the ship. Look, no better team to right the ship against than Florida, guys. And they come to Knoxville next week. I'll say this. I think the concern is that this Tennessee team was off a bye. They did not look like they had a bye, did they?
No.
And that's a big problem.
Well,
but
the other problem is, too, this Arkansas team is not as good as Oklahoma. That's a fact. I mean, Oklahoma's not great.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, they're a 6 and a 7, respectively, on the scale, and you're healthier for this game.
Can we also be fair and say before he went out, because let's be honest, outside of that last drive by Singleton, Taylor Green was the one who won Arkansas that game. Can we agree with that? If you were an Arkansas fan, you would give Taylor Green the most credit for winning this game, right?
Nah, I would probably give the defensive front. And if I'm an Arkansas fan, I'm probably thinking that they dominated this 5-star offensive tackle, transferring another guy who started like 30 games, and that their edge pass rush was just so incredible. Where now what you and I know is that they're not good at those positions.
Okay, well, I mean the offensive weapon. Your offensive weapon. You'd still say it was Taylor Green, right?
Oh, yes.
And a lot of people are going to say the pass defense for Tennessee got exposed in this game. Dave, I disagree with that. I think Taylor Green made some throws that nobody could have defended, quite honestly. And I don't think the secondary was that bad.
I thought it was tested and he hit some dimes. I'll give you that. But I don't think anybody really responded well. Is that fair? I mean, yeah, I can see where you're coming from, but to me, I mean, they're not a good passing football team. It shouldn't have gone that direction. You shouldn't have been in that position.
No, you shouldn't have. But I'm not going to put anything on the defense in this game.
I agree.
I'm not going to put a semblance of issue on the defense in this game. They got worn down in the end because they didn't get any help from the offense.
Nope.
And that's the biggest takeaway is the defense wore down because they didn't get any help from the offense. They trailed 3-0 at halftime. Okay. I mean, there's no way you're putting that on the defense.
No, I'm totally agree. So I have no argument with that. Last look brought to you by Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn. Look at me. No contacts, no glasses. LASIK got me right. They can do that for you as well. ccteyes.com.
To visit ccteyes.com. The information you need is easy to access, and setting an appointment is as simple as clicking the tab. Doctors Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn, and Eye Care Optical at ccteyes.com. Simply the best.
All right, Caleb, put this into a poll question for me. How does this team respond? I'm not asking specifically for Tennessee, Florida score prediction, but how does Tennessee respond? I would ask you this because a lot was on the line tonight, and Tennessee, whether it was a choke job by Nico or Josh Heupel had the wrong game plan, offensive tackle issues, whatever, this was a gut punch.
Okay, so I'm going to say, how does Tennessee respond? They're about to come undone, or
come together. Come undone or come together. How about that?
They're about to come undone, and then the next one is they'll rebound by playing Florida at home.
Okay, well, they're going to play Florida at home regardless.
They'll rebound because they're back at home.
Okay. Will Vols bounce back or whatever you want to do? It to me is still a little bit of a stunning game. I think I will say this. I would much rather be Tennessee with this loss than Ole Miss because I think they're more mercenary based. I would rather be Tennessee with this loss than Alabama because they got beat by Vanderbilt, for goodness sake. And I would rather be Tennessee with this loss than Missouri that got completely exposed. So those were three teams that were in college football playoff contention before Saturday. So I guess it could be worse. I don't know if that makes anybody feel any better.
It could absolutely be worse. It could absolutely be worse. And look, I think that, Dave, it's also very possible. We've been saying this for a while. There's not as many, the tiers are not as separate in college football as they once were in the age of NIL. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
And it looks a lot more like the NFL than college. And
I said this last week. I don't know if you remember it, but I think that as a whole, maybe a couple of weeks ago, I think as a whole that college football players are playing harder. And I don't know if it's because they're happier because they got to transfer where they wanted or it's NIL or what it is. But to me, it does truly look like this year, all the games I watch, it looks like AAA baseball does the major leagues, just shy of that.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. A lot of college football players are playing harder. It looks a lot more like the NFL. You're a Cowboy fan. Let's just say the Cowboys are a 13-3 type team from the 90s, the mid-90s Cowboys. They still were always good for a loss to like maybe a 9-17, weren't they? Once a year on the road. Like that, yeah. If that happened, you weren't going to be like, oh, the season's done.
Right. The difference was they lived and died by the run. I don't think that Josh Heupel gave his running game enough of a chance.
Yeah, no, he got the 2 running touchdowns, and then he tried to go straight to the air. He pulled Dylan Sampson, put Deshaun Bishop in there, and I'm thinking, well, no, you need to keep Dylan Sampson in there for right now until that's how they're going to respect you more. I just got a Nico is Jared Garantano. Guys, that's unfair in a lot of ways because that's negative towards Jared Garantano, and I think that people don't remember that Jared Garantano was forced into a horrible situation playing under Jeremy Pruitt. And Nico Iamaleava, you shouldn't say he's like Jared Garantano anyway because he's only played 5-6 games to this point. So,
well, guys, it's pretty simple. Tennessee couldn't stop Arkansas on the edge, and then at times they were able to drop people into coverage, and Tennessee had no answer underneath. And that to me is all on coaching. We can say Nico choked if you want, but Josh Heupel didn't have the right game plan. I thought adjusted at halftime to some extent, then didn't stick with it, and ultimately let Arkansas score on purpose, which was way premature. And I think about it now. We started the show. Who's this on? Offensive tackles, Nico or Heupel? I'm going to go back. I thought offensive tackles. This is all on Josh Heupel.
Yes, it's 100. I'm not 100, but it's a lot on Josh Heupel. I'm giving so much more of this blame to Josh Heupel. Whatever you want to
haven't even mentioned, Caleb, is that Arkansas not only won, but they won with a backup quarterback.
Well, yeah, their backup quarterback led the game-winning drive at the end. But I mean, we didn't mention it as much because it happened so late in the game And I remember the bad snaps that Arkansas was having. I don't know if that was on the fact that their backup quarterback was in there, but the defense was just so gashed on the final drive. And honestly, he didn't really look any worse than Taylor Green did.
No. Hit that like and subscribe button. You won't find better, more objective coverage of Tennessee football than right here with Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker. Monday we'll be with you at 10 a.m. Monday through Fridays. That's why you got to turn those notifications on. Be sure you ring that bell. We'll be with you each and every weekday. Jacob Warren will join us on Monday. Usually we take a look ahead to Tennessee's next opponent. We'll probably let this stew a little bit longer because this is something that deserves more than just the hour that we were able to give it tonight. So for Caleb Calhoun, I'm Dave Hooker. Follow us on offthehooksports.com, offthehooksports.com. Thank you, everybody, for being a part of it. Like, share, do all that good stuff, and we'll see where Tennessee goes from here. I'm not ruling out that this could be a total debacle of a season. I don't think that'll happen, but I'll tell you what, Caleb, if I had to say right now, I'm 70-30 that Tennessee will rebound and not have a debacle of a season. 70% to 30%. How sure are you? Debacle's 8-4, by the way, in my mind.
I'm 90%. They're not going 8-4. One, because to go 8-4, you have to lose to Florida or Mississippi State or Vanderbilt. That's not happening. Or Kentucky.
They don't. I mean, unless NIL starts some sort of trade or the transfer portal, you allow people to do that in the middle of the year and then go out and find some offensive tackles. I'm not ruling out 8-4. He's Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker. This